Hi guys, hope you all are doing well today. I have some things I need to share with you all, and it is basically saying what's done in secret will come to light. What's done in secret is going to come to light. It's going to come to light in the fruit, the behaviors, and the actions of people. Sometimes, guys, there are people that you'll never see what they're doing behind closed doors, but the fruit of what they are doing, the fruit of who they are serving, is going to come forward in their character and in their behaviors and the things that they do. There are lots of people who say that they are of God and they are in positions of leadership. That means they're in ministry. That means they may be singing on the choirs, and they are in administrative positions, and they're claiming to be of God. But there's a lot of things that they're doing in secret and behind closed doors that is going to manifest in some way. Always remember that the Lord is not going to have us to be fooled. And so sometimes, because of the positions that they hold, whether it's pastor, bishop, pastor's wife, pastor's aide, leader of some organization within the church, they are a tither, they are givers, they are big spenders in the house of God. And just because they go to church and they're prophesying and they're doing all these things and they're being a counselor, there are people that will still continue doing things and presenting a strange fire in the house of God and in their everyday lives. What does this mean? This goes back to Eli's sons. It was Eli, and Eli followed after the Lord. Eli was actually walking with Elijah, and he continued to do great things, but Eli's sons were sinning in the house of God. People were complaining to Eli about his sons, but his love for his sons was greater than following God. That's pretty much what it was. And so that's some areas in which families will have a hard time. There are people who their families are doing a lot of abominable things in the house of God. There are pastors whose children, grown kids, teen kids, but grown children are doing a lot of things, causing chaos and mayhem in the house of God. It could be their wives, could be their husbands, could be their family or their cronies that's doing a lot of stuff in the house of God, but specifically family. They are not able to take that stand because that's my son, that's my daughter, that's my grandchild, that's my wife, that's my husband. And so what happens is Eli's son did something similar, and they were doing things. The children of God the children of Israel were complaining, but he continued to allow them to do what they want to do. And so what his sons were doing was there's a certain way that they're supposed to worship. There's a certain way that you bring things to the altar of the Lord. And they decide they want to try something new and something different, and brought some unclean type of item into the house of God, and they were struck dead and killed on the spot. But the thing is, it didn't happen immediately. They had been doing some things for a long time. They had been accepting bribes. They had been just doing a lot of abominable things in secret, and people were turning a blind eye to what they were doing. And there were others that were complaining, but nothing was being done about it. It appeared that they were getting away with things, but what will eventually happen with people like that, people that continue to sin and to do wrong, and they're getting away with it, and they feel empowered, and they feel like no one could touch them because their parents is in a high position, and look how long I've been getting away with it. There's going to come a time when they're really going to try the hand of God. They're going to do something because they get more bold, and then that's when they're going to get struck down. How it happens, they may not fall dead while some do, but it can be something else that happens. And a lot of it, guys, people live up to a certain point, and God will just be like, time up, gotta go. Okay, the body is in the grave, but they live on, and it's not pleasant where they end up. So we're in times, guys, where you're going to have to ensure that you're being vigilant and you're being sober before the Lord, and you're also allowing the Lord to open up your eyes so that you are transparent before him, and you're willing to allow him to show you things that may be within you that's not pleasing to you. You want to ensure that if you are doing things that is wrong, you know that there's certain things you're still struggling with, that you need to be asking God to help you to be delivered and set free from that, because the wages of sin brings death. Not only that, guys, as I said before, You have to understand that the word of God is for you to study. It's not just for you to sit there and let somebody tell you a bunch of different things. You have to study, and you have to look through the word of God and ask the Lord to teach you how to study, teach you and show you the truth in the word. Because there are many people that's still handling the holy things of God. They're still doing business as usual in the church, in their community, on their home church, at their home church, on Zoom, whatever. But they would have just gotten up out of the bed of iniquity and sin. They would have just finished just doing something horrible, saying things, setting someone up, being a part of some sort of ungodly transaction and interactions, and just get up and go handle the things of God because they feel like it's all being done in secret and God is not going to see. So I want to read you Ezekiel chapter 8. I want to read something that the Lord showed Ezekiel, okay? And he showed him some things that was going on in the house of God. And so I'm going to start in verse 3. And he put forth the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my head, and the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven and brought me to the visions of God, to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looked towards the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provoked to jealousy. This is interesting to me. Where was the seat? So on the inner gates, the Lord is taking Ezekiel in a vision. He's basically showing him in the spirit the things that's going on in the house of, in Judah and the house of Israel, the things that they are doing. And guys, the more you get closer to God and the more you're serving him, the more your eyes are going to be open to things that's going on around you. And sometimes you're going to be like, why do I have to be seeing these things? But it's important that you see the inner works and you're seeing what's being done in the dark. God is going to just begin to reveal that to you. Maybe not in your church, but sometimes you begin to see the darkness in people around you who you've trusted and who you've mentored. And correction, not who you've mentored, but those who may have mentored you. You're going to begin to see the difference. There's a reason for that. So anyway, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provoketh to jealousy? And behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, according to the vision that I saw in the plain. Then said he unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes, and now the way toward the south. So I lifted up my eyes, the way towards the north. Let me read that again. That's verse 5. Then he said unto me, Son of man, lift up your eyes, now the way toward the south. So tell him to look towards the north. I don't know why I keep saying south. So he told him to look towards the north. So I lifted up mine eyes the way towards the north, and behold, northward at the gate of the altar, this image of jealousy is in the entry. Okay. So this place will be like the house, the house of God. Remember, a temple was built for God, and there was an outer court and the inner court and all of that. This is supposed to be God's house where his spirit would dwell. Not that you can infuse God in that, but whatever part of him, his presence. This is the house of God, but this is what's going on. So as you said, at the north side to the gate of the altar, okay, the entrance was the image of jealousy at the entry, okay? And there was a seat for the image of jealousy, which provoketh the Lord to anger. Okay? This spirit that incites jealousy in others. And so as he's going further in, now he's going to the entrance to enter into the house. But guess what? The image, the gate of the, behold, northward at the gate of the altar, this image of jealousy in the entry. Now it is at the gate, but now it's in the entrance leading in. So in verse 6, he said, furthermore unto me. So this is what the Lord said to Ezekiel, Son of man, seest thou what they do? Even the great abominations that the house of Israel commit here, that I should go far from my sanctuary. So his presence is not there. The presence of the Lord has moved from there, guys. Okay, because of the abominations and the things that's going on in his house. Okay? And he brought me to the door of the courts. So it's going further into the door of the courts. Okay? And I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. So he's showing him again. So he took him in, showed him what was showed him the seat of the image of jealousy that provokes the jealousy at the gate. Okay, this jealousy is there at the entrance of the door. Okay, jealousy is in the entrance. And he said, furthermore, son of man, seest thou what they do, even the great abominations that the house of Israel commit here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary? But turn you again and see that thou shalt turn you again, and you shall see greater abominations. So he showed him some more things. And he brought me to the door of the court. So he's taking him deeper into the house, a sanctuary that's supposed to be of God. And he brought me to the door of the court. And when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. Then he said unto me, son of man, dig now in the wall. And when I digged in the wall, behold, a door. So there's a hole, secrecy. The Lord tells him to reach in to see there is a door there. And he said, go in and behold the wicked abominations that they do here. So I went in and saw, and behold, every form of creeping things and abominable beast, and all the idols of the house of Israel portrayed upon the wall round about. And there stood before them 70 men of the ancients of the house of Israel, and in the midst of them stood Jaazaniah, the son of Zaphan, with every man his censer in his hand, and thick cloud of incense went up. So when he looks in this place, he's seeing all sorts of abominable things that's being written on a wall. Okay. And when he looked in, he sees the ancients. These are the elders. These are the older people. These are the ones that people will look up to. Okay. And a specific person standing in the midst of them, they have their incense up, and they're giving, they're worshiping and paying homage to these images. Then said he unto me, son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark, every man in the chambers of his imagery? For they say, the Lord seeth not, and the Lord hath forsaken the earth. The reason why many people are turning to different gods and things that they're doing this day is because they're losing faith in the Lord. They're losing faith in the word. They look at certain things and maybe the trials and tribulations and things that's going on, the process of faith and forgiveness and all of that. They're just like, you know what, I don't want to. They're losing faith in that, and so they are now being pulled to do something a little bit different, but it's all being done in the house of the Lord. So he says, turn you again, and you shall see greater abominations that they do. And he brought me to the door of the house of the Lord's house, which was towards the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Then said he unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn you again, and you shall see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court. The inner court now. First, we were at the gate, and then we went to the entrance of the door, and then we went even further into the doors of the court. And as you went deeper and further in places that should be more holy and sanctified unto God, we're finding more and more abominable things and a lot of secrecy. So now we are in the inner courts. That's the holies of holies, guys. If you really study how the temple and how the temple of God was built and the purpose. And so he takes him to the inner court in the spirit and shows him. So 16 said, and he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men. So 25 men were there with their backs toward the temple of the Lord. So they had turned their backs to God, they turned their back to God and their face toward the east, and they worship the sun toward the east. Then he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing for the house of Judah, that they commit the abominations which they commit here, for they have filled the land with violence and have returned to provoke me to anger, and lo, they put the branch to their nose. Therefore will I also deal with in fury, mine eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity, and though they cry in mine ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them. And if you go to the next chapter, guys, in chapter 9, you're going to see where the Lord sends an angel out to bring destruction. But the first thing that he says to these men, what he tells them is that they've been given the commandment to go out and slaughter these people, okay, that are doing wrong. But first he tells them there was one that was clothed in linen, and he had an inkhorn by his side, and the Lord told them to put a mark on those who are actually against the abominations, and those who are saddened by what's going on. They are following him, they're following the Lord. He says put a mark on them, and then after that, he says, go after him throughout the city and smite. He told them to go and smite everybody else that has been going against me and following after these things. So he says, slay utterly, completely destroy, old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. And they began at the ancient men which were before the house. And it goes on and on and on. And here's Ezekiel begging God and saying, oh Lord, please spare them. Please spare them. But the Lord says, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great. And Judah and the land is full of blood, and the city is full of perverseness. For they say, the Lord has forsaken the earth, and the Lord seeth not. And as for me, also my eye shall not spare, neither will I take pity, but I will recompense their ways upon their head. Guys, the wrath of God is no joke. I've talked about that before. People always want to just get us to think of Jesus, think of God as, he's merciful, he's loving, and he's not going to do anything. No, God's wrath is horrible, and you don't want it. We don't want it. You say, oh, children too? Yes, children, women and children. And this is not old stuff, guys. Yes, this happened back then, but God's wrath is still very present. It's a dangerous thing to fall into the hands of God. And there is a side of God where he does not care if you're crying. He does not care if you're screaming. When you have sinned against him and people are doing wrong, his eyes are not going to spare, and he's not going to have compassion, and he's just going to bring recompense on your head. And this is something that we have to really make that sit and sink into our heads. And now you have people that's prideful and think that they know better than God to say, well, if he's a God like that, well, you can say that all you want, but if I was you, I wouldn't. You can say that all you want, but that's not going to change who God is. Now, going back to what I was saying at the very beginning, guys, is that we're in times, and what the Lord is revealing is that there's a lot of people that's talking about God and God this and the Lord that and all these different things. They're still putting their hands to do holy things. They're still putting their hands to do the work of God, but in secret, they're doing ungodly things. There's a lot of things that's happened within the household of faith and in the house of God where there's a lot of abominations. There are people that you have looked up to. There's a lot of people that's on television that you've known. They will be considered like the ancients. Not all of them, but about 99.99% of them have turned away from God. There's only a few of them because what they've allowed is for pride and for the things that that the blessings that God has given to them, they now have turned themselves to think, well, I can try things another way. Sometimes, guys, they're not necessarily bowing down before an altar. They may not be worshiping the sun, but they're bowing down to the ways of this world, the principles of this world. They're able to be influenced by certain people to say, well, don't talk about this anymore in your messages. Focus on this. They're bowing down and they're worshiping the spirit of adultery because they know people are doing sinful things, but because this person is paying them big money, they worship and they fall down to the feet of the spirit of adultery. Jealousy is in the house of God, because what a lot of these individuals are doing is they are pitting the saints against one another by saying, well, if you want to be close to me, then you have to do this. So everybody's clamoring and fighting to be pastor's aide, to be on pastor's side. Everybody's clamoring for the pastor, the leader, or this person's trying to get their attention and their affections and their approval. So there's jealousy in the house of God. You can't sit with us. That's basically the mindset that's in the house of God. We're the popular ones. You can't sit with us, and if you want to be with us, then you have to do this and this and this. So it stirs up jealousy in the house of God. Jealousy in music, jealousy in arts, the areas of the arts and admin. Everyone is trying to one up one another. Jealousy in who's giving more tithes and offering, who's giving this, who's giving that. There's all this stuff that's going on where there is jealousy in the house of God. There is jealousy over the anointing and the gifts that God has given to us. There's jealousy and hatred and malice that's in the house of God. People are jealous when someone has the pure light of Christ in them, and they want to snuff that out. Jealousy over the men and women that come in the house of God. Jealousy over their looks. Jealousy over their capabilities. Jealousy over their call. That's there in the house of God. So not everybody is necessarily falling down in front of an altar or in something that's shaped like a beast, but they are falling down to the ways of this world because they have turned away from the principles of God. They have perverted.
Guys, the video got cut off here, but what I'm basically saying is the things of God has become perverted, no longer holy, mixed in and convoluted with things that are dark and things that are carnal and worldly. So let's continue on, guys.
And it's being convoluted and being mixed in with a bunch of other things. There's people that's mixing light and dark. A lot of these things are going on within the house of God. Light and dark, bitter and sweets. Bitter and sweet, sweet and sour, salty and fresh water, all in one, and that cannot be. And so the Lord has removed himself, and he's bringing his wrath. It's going to happen. Guys, sometimes the things that I told you before, the things that you can read about in the news and the crazy things that's happening in the world is because there are people that's sinning and doing things against the Lord. And it starts in church. It starts in the sanctuary. God is saying my presence is not here because there's a bunch of abominations. And the only way that you're going to see the truth is that he's going to have to open your eyes and show you what is there. Because they think that God has forsaken us. What is happening? Many people, they have become hardened and bitter against God. Some people are mad at God because, Lord, I've been praying to you for this and you haven't caused it to happen. I lost my wife. I lost my husband. I lost my child. This happened. Here's the situation. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to bow down I'm going to bow down at the feet of the devil because I can get the glories and the kingdoms of this world. People will never say that out of their mouth, but by their fruit you shall know them. The things that they do, the things that they choose to do. And so what the Lord is doing, he's doing it and uncovering during these times. He is uncovering, he's exposing, he is cleaning the house. He doesn't want that. He is bringing vengeance. All these things are happening. And so sometimes how could be women and children? Eli's sons were killed because of what they were doing. And that can happen. People are sinning and they're raising up little minions of themselves, walking around in pride and destruction and doing things, being wicked. God can see exactly what's coming up in that child and take them. Yes, he can. And people don't realize that God can do that. They keep the biggest mistake that we're ever going to make is just thinking God is just a God of love, because if you're just thinking he's a God of love, which he is, but if you're only focused on that and you're only focused on him being loving and forgiving, you're going to keep pushing the envelope with him, and then you'll experience his wrath. That's why we have to be careful the things that we do, because when you sin, and if the strong man at the door has been bound by the enemy, the saint could come in and do whatever he wants to do. But keep in mind here, a mark was placed on those that God knows who are standing by him and knows that these things are wrong. Those that are speaking out against it, he has them covered. So there's destruction and mayhem going all around going on around them, and they might have felt fear. And even Ezekiel felt fear, and he was crying out to the Lord and saying, oh Lord, spare them, spare them. He said, no, I will not. But Ezekiel was not destroyed. And you have to know that God is going to cover his people. He's going to cover those few that's sitting there, and we know that certain things are wrong. We're not following after the narrative. While they may laugh and they may be gathered together and they're doing their things and they're continuing, you keep yourself clean and you keep your garments clean. Don't be tempted to go along to get along. You do what God has shown you. God, do the things that God has told you to do, and believe him when he reveal things to you. Very often what happens is people, because the majority is doing it, when God opens your eyes and he shows you something, you could talk yourself out of it, and you may go and say, well, Pastor, I saw this and saw that, and God will be revealing things to you in your own house, and you will leave your house and go find this person and tell them what the Lord showed you, and they talk you out of it. Or you pick up the phone to call them, or you send them an email with what God has revealed to you, give it to them, and they can talk you out of it and make you doubt yourself. The Lord is revealing truth. The Lord is exposing things. And the Lord is just showing, guys, that there are many people who are still operating in the house of God. They're still in the church business. They're still in ministry, in music. They're still writing songs. They're still being invited to go and speak in certain places. The abominable, and detestable things are being invited into the house of God to lay hands on people, to teach your children. The abominable things are standing and proclaiming things and saying what thus said the Lord, but yet in secret they're living a different life. There are people who are believing in different gods. There are people who are literally building altars unto other gods and burning in incense and sacrifices. There are other people that is in a cult, and they are practicing dark arts and light magic, white magic, doing all this stuff, and they're still coming to preach and teach you. There are individuals who are there seeking out psychics for counsel, and they're going to get their spiritual baths, and they're doing all these different things, and they're messing with tarot cards, and then they're coming in to prophesy and to preach. There are people who are saying they're prophesying to you in the name of the Father, but what they're doing is, you don't see that they have been seeking and going through tarot cards to give you a quote unquote prophetic word of the day, which is nothing more than a psychic reading. But they're not going to tell you that, because the church business is money business. And they're in there as tares to bring people down and to lead people astray. But anybody who ends up being led astray, if anybody stands before God and here, depart from me, it's not going to be anybody else's own fault but their own, because God is not going to leave you blind. But most people, whatever church you were in or you are in, maybe God has shown you something right now. You see it. You've seen it. You doubted. You wasn't sure. And God showed you something else again. And you still sit there. And why do you do that? Well, because your husband and your wife don't agree, or, you don't know what's going to happen with the kids. And that's what happens. Some people enter into some ministries, and their whole family gets so caught up in this place and they become so entangled and yoked up in it that they are so afraid to actually step aside and do what God has told them to do, because, oh, well, what's going to happen to the kids? What's going to happen? They're afraid to take a hold of their own family. They're afraid to lead their own family. They're afraid to teach their own family. They're afraid to have a Bible study. And a lot of times, sometimes the families could be rejecting them because they are used to getting their word and prayer and everything else from people outside the house. And I'm not saying, guys, that pastors and leaders don't have a purpose, but they don't have a higher purpose when it comes to you and your household. They do not trump you when it comes to your house and your family. And so, guys, the abomination and the darkness has entered into the house of God. Jesus talks about the tares that were sown among the wheat. And it says that the children of the devil has been sown among those who are of God. And they're just there masquerading and doing what they want to do. But God told the angels, don't do anything, because you pull them up, you might pull up the weed as well. We'll wait till the end where we will separate them and we will put them into outer darkness. There are many things, guys, that you're not going to see with a natural eye, but you're only going to see in the spiritual. And some things you're going to see it. Sometimes, guys, it's not only going to be just church relationships and things of that nature, but people around you. God begins to open up your eyes to those who are around you, almost to the point where you're like, God, is there anybody who's pure? Is there anybody who's clean? Is there anybody that's following you? Or God, when are you going to just show me some good stuff? But understand that he's trying to save your soul. If someone does not tell you about danger and you don't believe it, you're going to be mad at somebody if they don't tell you, hey, there's a killer around the corner, because, oh, well, you just want to hear good news. So I won't tell you anything about the danger that's lurking. I won't tell you that if you go down this road, this is going to happen. Well, no, just go, because I want you to have happy thoughts only. The Lord reveals things to us so we can know the truth, so that we can be set free, so that we can avoid the pitfalls and the things that we should not allow ourselves to fall into. So, guys, I'm going to stop this video here. But the bottom line I want you to know, and what the Lord has revealed to me, what I believe that he's given me to speak to you all today, is that there are a lot of people today, my brothers and sisters, who are dibbling and dabbling in things that are ungodly. They're living lifestyles that is ungodly. They have bitten of the fruit of this world. They have conformed to this world. They have made some under the table deals with the powers of darkness of this world, and they're still in the house of God teaching. So, guys, just keep your eyes on God. If you fear man and if you trust in man more than God, you're not going to make it. You will not make it. Let our prayer be, Father, open up my eyes so I can see what's around me. Father, let me not be afraid to do the things that you have told me to do. Let me not be afraid to obey your word and to do your will and to do what you have told me to do. Let me not be afraid, oh God, to trust you with all my heart. Let me not be influenced by those because I'm familiar with this person and because I can't think of because I'm afraid to teach my own family. Teach me how to raise my family and how to teach my family, oh God. And Lord, let me not be afraid to forsake all for you. If my family wants to ignore me and ignore your voice, God, let me not be afraid to move forward in you, because your word says in Matthew 19:29 that he who has left houses and homes and cattle and sons and daughters and mother and father and spouse for my sake shall receive 100-fold and the kingdom of heaven. So, guys, I'm going to stop here, but you stay vigilant, you stay prayerful, and as long as you're doing that, God is going to do the rest. He will take care of you, and he's going to protect you. He's going to put a seal and his mark on you, guys, so that when mayhem and chaos is going on all around you, you can be still and know God's not going to touch you. God's not going to allow anything to happen to you, because he knows who belongs to him and who does not. God bless.